Okay, at this point, I've painted where I saw the old background showing through. And now, what I want to see, is there any place where the hair, well, where it's getting a haircut, and it shouldn't. And in order to do that, we're going to change the preview. We're going to change the preview at the top of this dialog box from on white to a choice called overlay. And with overlay, we're just going to see a red overlay covering up the areas that wouldn't be selected. And now I can zoom in. You have a zoom tool up here and a hand tool, or you can use standard keyboard shortcuts that work in any tool in Photoshop to zoom in, like Command plus to zoom in. And I'll zoom up, and what I'm looking for now is the red area indicates what we discarded when we're done. And so I'm looking for hair that's blatantly going into the red area, because that's where we'd be getting a haircut. And wherever I see that, I'm going to paint over it and give Photoshop control over what's happening. So I can see little hairs coming into the red overlay here, and so I'll paint over that, giving Photoshop control of what happens in that area. When I let go, it will recalculate it, and hopefully the red, therefore, will more closely match, because it's going to do its work. I see some red overlapping the hair here, so I'll paint there as well, and get all the hair all the way out to the edges. And you see how the red has been recalculated? It much more closely matches now, because the original position of the red is based on the selection I had. And here, only where I paint do I give Photoshop control. And so I'll paint here. And I can just do around this whole thing if I need to, and I don't have to let go until I got everything I think it might need help with. About there. It's just when I let go is when it recalculates. So I think that's looking a lot better as far as how the red is matching. I'll go over to the tail. And where the tail is, I see red covering up parts of the tail here. So I'll click and I'll paint over those parts. Maybe go all the way up this edge, because that just looks a little weird. Okay, missing the tail there. That kind of stuff. I'm not worried about the rest of the image right now. If you notice areas like right here, I can see the red overlapping. If it's not furry, fuzzy, or hairy, then this isn't what I should use to fix it. I should have used the quick selection tool, or just quick mask mode with painting, or something else to do it. The thing I'm using right now is for furry, fuzzy, and hairy. And if it's not furry, fuzzy, and hairy, I probably will be more effective using something else to refine something. So I'm only looking for those furry, fuzzy, and hairy stuff. Now, if you want just to see the difference, I can change the preview back to on white to see if it looks any better. I think it does, because before it wasn't looking so hot, right? There's one area that I really dislike, though, where we have the hair, and that is the tail. It looks like there's some extra stuff. If I go over to where the tail is and zoom up on it, do you see some stuff that doesn't look like tail? Well, let's see if we can deal with it. While we're in this little tool here, there's actually more to it. In the upper left, there are two choices, that and that. This means give Photoshop control. This means take away control. And I think I can hold down the Option key to temporarily get to this if I want to, or I can click on it manually and then I don't have to hold down any keys. And now I'm going to take away control of Photoshop. And so if I click and drag here, I'm going to say, no, you screwed up there. You don't get to control that. And I'll paint, get also up here. And when I release the mouse, it should recalculate. And what it's really doing is bringing me back to what we had previously. And right there, my selection was probably sticking out too far. And so what we had previously wasn't very good. So I might have to redo that manually. But what I'll do here is just make sure I've taken all the control away. I'll bring it all the way into here. And then I'll come back with the other brush, the one that gives control, and I'll only give it out as far as it needs and see if I can do any better. Yeah. There's still a little bitty chunk there, but I might have to fix that afterwards. Right here also there's a little bit of weird stuff. I can either click on the one that looks like the eraser or just hold down the Option key. You can tell inside your brush you'll have a plus sign, which means you're giving Photoshop control, or a minus sign, which means you're taking it away. And so I could come in here and say take away some of the control in there. There we go. Clean that up. And I can do the same thing over here if I have too much. Then when I'm done, I'm going to assume I'm done right now, Down here at the bottom, we have a choice called output. And this says what kind of end result we want. We started off when we went into this command with a selection. So in this case, it's offering us, do we want to end up with just a selection? Or would you like to end up with a layer mask attached to the layer? Do you want a brand new layer with a layer mask so you have a copy of the original? Or do you want this in a new document? But you just need to choose what you want. In my case, I'm going to say I want just a layer mask attached to this layer so that we end up hiding things like we have here. I'll click OK. And now you notice that we have my layer with a mask attached. We can further refine this then by going here to the mask, hold down the Option key and clicking on it. Option clicking on a mask. If you remember at the very beginning of this session, I think I mentioned it, that lets you view it. So now we could see what we have in here, and in some places we might need to paint to touch it up. That type of thing. Option click again to turn it off. Let me show you how I might fix some parts of the body, not the hairy parts, but the body. Because sometimes you end up with a layer mask and it's not easy to tell that if you need to come in here and fix something like the belly down here where there's a notch cut out. Sure, you can grab the paintbrush tool, and since you're working on the layer mask, you could paint with black or white to modify what's there. If you were to paint with white, you would make areas show up, because that's how it works in a layer mask, and you could paint like this to make that area show up. But how far out should I paint? I can't see where the old edge was. So here's a trick that I find to be useful whenever you have a layer mask that's hiding things. First, you can disable the layer mask. You do that by holding down the Shift key and clicking within the layer mask. When you disable the layer mask, everything comes back into view. Make sense? But the problem is, now I can't see where the layer mask would have hid things. So here's what I find to be useful. After I disable the layer mask by shift-clicking on it, I'm going to then view the layer mask as an overlay on top of my picture. An overlay that looks a lot like Quick Mask mode. It's just not Quick Mask mode. It looks the same though. And the way you do that is when it's a layer mask that you want to overlay, instead of typing the letter Q to go to Quick Mask mode, which is what you would do if you had a selection on your screen, when it's a mask, what you need to do instead is press the backslash key. It's right above the return or enter key on my keyboard. It's the slash key that leans towards the left. And for you guys, it would be this way, I think. For me, I'm looking at the other side of it. But if I press that, let's see what happens. I get a red overlay. So we've disabled the mask, so we can actually see the whole picture. I did that by shift-clicking on the mask. Then I pressed the backslash key all by itself. It's not command backslash or anything else. It's just backslash. And a lot of people get the slashes mixed up. It's not the one you use for websites. You know, when you type in http://, not that one, the one that leans the other way. Okay? Now I can come in here and I can refine this. So if I paint with white, I can come in here and very easily see exactly where that needs to be touched up. And then if I need to paint with black to hide things, there's a trick there as well. Usually you can click this little icon with the arrows to switch your foreground and background colors, like this. That has a keyboard shortcut, and it's the letter X for exchanging them. So therefore, I'll come in here, and when I need to paint with white, I just hit the letter X. I'm painting with one color, I hit X again, and I'm painting with the opposite. So I can come in here and try to get that till it really looks like it might match the edge. Okay, question?
So even though your mask is disabled, you're still painting on the mask?
Yes. What happens is if you look in the layers panel, you can tell what's active by looking at the corners. If you notice the corners of the mask have little brackets around them, that means that if I paint or I run a filter or I perform an adjustment, it's going to happen to that. Even if it's disabled, that's what's active. If I clicked over here, now the image is active, so the paint would actually show up on the picture when I painted. But as long as those little brackets are over here, then even if this is disabled or hidden or anything else, that's where the editing is happening. But But I had done two things. I held down the Shift key and clicked on that, which disabled it. And then I pressed the backslash key to see it as an overlay. And that made it so I could more easily come in here and fine-tune things. And the final part of it was when I'm painting, if I need to switch from painting with black to painting with white or the other way around, I press the letter X. And that exchanges my foreground and background colors so that I get them swapped. And so I find that to be overly useful, usually after I've created a selection using another tool, and it's as a mask, I might need to come in and do a little fine-tuning. Questions?
Yes.
What's that?
When you made the selection and then you hid the selection by in this mode right now where you're at, does it take the actual selection and make it into a channel in the background?
You could say so. Just so you know, a layer mask is a channel attached to a layer. So if you, it's a concept that a lot of people really don't have. I mean, people that have used Photoshop for 20 years don't have a good grasp on. And that is anytime you see anything that looks like this, it is a channel. It's just a matter of, in this case, it's a channel attached to a picture. But if I go to the channels panel, you'll see it sitting right there.
So is that what the mask, is that what allows the mask to appear even after you turn it off? Is that kind of reflecting on the channel to make that mask when you're back in the picture itself?
Somewhat, yeah. I mean, it's just a channel attached to a layer. And the fact that I disabled it doesn't mean I can't work on it. It just means that it's not affecting the layer at the moment. So it's just something where you just got to get used to the idea that you can edit something that's not currently hiding parts of this layer. It's just, it will hide parts of this layer when you turn it back on. You know?
Okay, so I guess then my question is if you go back over, or you've got it turned off and then you're back over in the main picture and you hit Q and bring the mask up again and you begin to add additional spaces where you're cleaning it up, does that make changes to the channel in the background?
Yeah, the channel and the mask are one and the same.
Okay, so you could save that separately?
Yeah, this thing here is a channel attached to a layer. And you can look at that channel either here or in the channels panel. That right there is exactly the same as that right there. They are the same thing. And if I click away from this layer so it's not active and I go to channels, it doesn't show up. It needs to have that layer active to get it to show up. But this and what was attached to the layer are one and the same. You're just two different places you can access it. Also, that's somewhat, what can be confusing for some is that's also the same as what Quick Mask is. If I have a selection and I type Q, you see it in the channels panel, Quick Mask is a temporary channel. So it's a thing that takes a while to get your brain around because of things, but for now all you need to know is that if you have a mask and you hold Shift and click on it, it will no longer hide parts of that layer. But that doesn't prevent you from showing it as an overlay. But the thing that you'll forget is you're used to getting that overlay by typing Q. Q is for Quick Mask. This isn't Quick Mask. Quick Mask is only used when you have a selection. If it looks like little marching ants, you hit Q to get it overlay. If instead it looks like a mask attached to something, you hit backslash instead. So it's kind of confusing because they look all the same and all it is one thing overlaid on top of your picture. It's just the first time people were introduced to the concept was when they were learning Quick Mask mode. And therefore, every time you ever see a red overlay, you think, Quick Mask. No, it's just a thing overlay on your picture. You just happen to be introduced to it when you learn the concept of Quick Mask, so you think that every time red is overlaid on your picture, it's Quick Mask mode. No, it's just something overlaid. And it just happens to be that if you had a selection and you type Q, it looks the same. But since it's not attached to a layer, it's not exactly the same. We can do similar changes and such. So I don't know, it'll take a little while to get your brain around all those things. But let's move on when it comes to Furry, Fuzzy, and Hairy. Okay? Let's come in and I just got a bunch of pictures of people, because that usually are furry, fuzzy, and hairy things. And there's all sorts of things we can do with them. I'm just going to choose one of these, open it up. And let's see if we're going to run into some issues when it comes to color changes and similar stuff. Because having edges, especially if we have like colored hair and stuff, yeah, we might end up with some problems. And I want to run into problems so we can learn how to solve them. So let's try some things out. So we need to start off, as usual, with a selection. So Photoshop has some idea what we want to keep, because as far as it's concerned, maybe we want the background, and we still need that exact selection around the hair. So we use the quick selection tool. It doesn't have to be a quick selection, it can be any tool. It's just quick selection tool is quick and easy, so you often will start with that. And before I usually get into doing the refine edge, I usually make sure this selection is a pretty good one, because it's what I'm going to be stuck with for the rest of the image. And so I will usually, when I'm done with it, I'll type the letter Q to get that overlay that you can get. And if it doesn't look right, I'll fix it before I deal with the hair. But let's just say I'm trying to get rid of the top portion, and the bottom will keep. So at this point, if this is what I got out of the quick selection tool, I'll just hit the letter Q, and I'll zoom up on it, and I'll say, where did it mess up? Where does it not quite define this correctly? And if there's a spot where it doesn't look good, like here in the armpit, I'm going to fix it now. So I'm in quick mask mode because I type the letter Q. I can come in here with my paintbrush then, and I might come in here and paint like this, and I'm okay getting a little overspray onto the body, because then I hit the letter X to get the opposite color, and then I can take it right off the body. It's a lot easier to get into that little corner by putting in too much and taking some away than trying to get a brush so small that you can get way up in there. Here it looks messed up, so I'll hit the letter X because I got to paint with black. Black is what adds the red stuff, and I'll come in there and paint. A lot of people will ask, what kind of brush should I have? How soft should the edge be? Well, the answer is right in front of you. What it means is the softness of your brush should match the softness of that object. So if the thing's out of focus, you need a soft brush. If the thing's really crisp focused, you need a crisp brush that doesn't fade out. It's a matter of your brush should match the edge quality of the thing that this red stuff is supposed to touch. So here, this is semi-soft, so I'm going to use this semi-soft brush. So here I might also come over here and get a little too much out to there, hit the letter X. This has a crisper edge than the arm, so I might end up with a slightly crisper brush, but then I can take it away there. Fix those kinds of things. I'm not going to spend too much time doing that though, because that's not the hard part. The hard part is getting the hair, furry, fuzzy, hairy stuff looking right. I only stress that fixing the other parts, because if I don't, then everybody assumes you're going to use the thing that's designed for hair for doing it. I'll type Q to get out of that.